This recording is playing back at 1.5x speed because there's nothing really dramatic on the video. Here, making a left lane change, I edited it, and then making another right lane change, and then making another left change. So again, it all looks pretty smooth here. It felt pretty smooth as well. So nothing dramatic. If you look at the andro sensor data, the first left-hand lane change probably starts around 340 seconds. Again, pretty quiet on both the gyroscope and the accelerometer. Again, ignore the big excursions because that's where I marked the data. The second move probably occurring around 355 seconds. Again, pretty quiet on both the steering wheel, the gyroscope on top, as well as the accelerometer. And then the third move, you can see a third lane change. You can see on the gyroscope data, there's a couple of blips there. It looks like there's two velocity changes that are obvious with the steering wheel and the gyroscope at maybe 375 seconds and maybe close to 380. Those are also very small relative to what we saw in the .76 release, where we saw upwards of plus or minus 0.4 radians per second or 23 degrees per second on the steering wheel. So all of this, as people have been reporting, looks good on the data, as well as when the lane changed, it looked a lot smooth, much, much closer to how a human being would do it. This clip is going at 3/4 speed. You could see that the left turn blinker is on and how long it's taken to turn. Just want to make that one comment. The smoothness is definitely much, much, much better, but there seems to be more of a delay in when the turn executes. Now, I know a lot of that has to do with the cars in front. Here's another left-hand turn. I edited 3/4 speed. You can see it delays. Maybe it's delaying because of the car in front. I don't know. But it's hard to tell when the car is going to change lanes and when it isn't, similar to the problem that we saw in .76. Here's the andro sensor data, and you can see it's pretty quiet. If you look at, you can see there's one steering wheel move on the gyroscope at about 440 seconds, but again, about half the amplitude of the .76 release. That's for the first left-hand lane change, and then for the second lane change, that's probably occurring around, I don't know, 455 or so. Pretty quiet, pretty smooth, no jerks going on. So overall, again, I think this is good, other than the delay of when the move actually starts. And to me, it's not clear that's unique to this .c release. I think that problem was there in the .76 release as well. You can see with this clip at half speed, going under the overpass, making a left change, and I'm going to show you the andro data. The car hesitated, kind of got stuck on the dotted line again a little bit. It was .76-like, not anywhere near as large amplitude, but it showed the same tendency, and I don't know if that overpass was part of the problem. Here's the andro data. You can see it starts making the move probably around 515 seconds or so, maybe 520. And then you can see the big abrupt change that's happening at 532 seconds. It seems to have waited and then makes a big correction. Remember, when the gyro data goes up, it's making a left turn. You don't see any big disruption on the accelerometer, but it does make a larger change here, particularly in the opposite direction, almost as large as .76. This was the only time I saw this, but it seems to me that maybe the algorithm is similar, but it's been tuned differently. So this tendency is still there, but highly muted compared to where it was before. This clip is going half speed, making a right lane change, and watch the cluster. The car starts to brake. It thinks there's a car in front of me because there is, but it's moving to the left lane. It brakes too hard. I had to take auto steer off because I felt the person behind me wasn't expecting that, because normal driving, you wouldn't have put the brakes on in that condition, but TACC did. This clip is going at 3/4 speed. Watch the power meter in the upper right go to green. It starts to try to brake, I think because it sees the cars on the right, is my suspicion. Here's another clip where it's coming down. The lines are not continuous, so it starts to slow down. So in both cases, this isn't what you'd expect as a driver. This clip's running 3/4 speed. You can see in the upper right cluster, car bouncing around all over the place. Wasn't clear what the reason was until I went back and looked at the video, and the double yellow line all busted up. Not obvious. This clip is running at 3x speed because you've all seen perpendicular park before. Really like this feature. It's cool, useful in where I live. Only problem is it's easy to get the P to come up when you're parking to your right, but if you're parking to your left when you're coming down a lane, more difficult to get the P to show up, but still a very, very cool feature. Love it. This clip is also running at 3x speed to show parallel park. Another cool feature, works pretty well for me all the time. Not much more to say other than watch the magic. This is a side-by-side comparison of the .76 release versus the .c release on the Android data, looking at the lane change performance. Item number one shows that there are really large excursions on the velocity of the steering wheel. That creates performance number two, which is large accelerations in the x direction, upwards of a half a G to moving the car around. So that was very unsettling, very abrupt, moving quickly. You can see in the .c release in the upper right, item 3, there were still some excursions of the steering wheel. There were very much fewer of them, but they still were occurring. But the spikes weren't as rapid, and they didn't create accelerations in number 4. So they didn't really feel anywhere near as bad to the person sitting in the car as they did in the .76 release. So overall, I would say the .c release is substantially better, doesn't create the large excursions, and the only thing that I observed was it seemed to be more delays because maybe the algorithm was tuned down, so there were more delays in the lane change performance, but overall I think it was a pretty good release for the lane change. In these charts, we're comparing on the left the Android sensor data for a human changing lanes. In this case, it was me changing lanes, and on the right is the best of what release or the .c release had to offer. So you can see they're both pretty quiet. Actually, the human looks like the data is a little bit more noisy on the gyro side of it, but I wouldn't take that too seriously because you'd have to do a lot more calibrations to get comparers and the right set of conditions. But the reason for showing you this is that I think when the .c release is at its best, it actually can perform as good as a human, or maybe we hopefully believe that it'll be better in the future. But it can work pretty well. And again, this is showing the best of what .c release could do, not necessarily the excursions that I show on the previous page. So you won't necessarily get this performance all the time, but I think overall we should be pretty pleased that we're getting close to human performance under a set of ideal conditions. So here is the scorecard that I introduced in the prior release, 17.26.76. So what you see on top of this chart is just a repeat of that, and on the bottom is the update with the .c release shown below. And if you start with the bottom left, auto steer highway, the big change is the lane change confidence, meaning that it's now much more consistent. We don't see the large accelerations or the large steering wheel changes other than a couple of exceptions, but obviously a lot better. So I gave it a rating of a 7. Previously I'd given the .76 release a 2, which was unacceptable. Here I'm putting it at a 7. I didn't give it a green because I did see some excursions on it, and there's also a delay going on which could be uncomfortable for others. So that's basically the change from what I could tell, at least as it relates to Autopilot in the .c release. It modified the lane change. It seems to me the algorithm's the same, but the coefficients may be different and the amplitude's different. And so it is a lot smoother and a lot less abrupt and something that's more comfortable. Everything else in here, I didn't change anything because I didn't see any observable changes in any of it. So this release still gets a total average score on the right of a 4 because moving from a 2 to a 7, it doesn't change the score substantially for the total because I haven't weighted these here. I'm sure we could do some weighting and things could change. So the overall score is still a 4 even though the lanes change movement is quite a bit better. So thanks for listening again, and we'll hopefully be talking more online. Cheers.